Welcome to today's session. My name is Darrell Watley. Just a brief introduction. I've worked with the control and support team. I've been with BMC for 17 years and with control and product for about 6. Today we're going to go over the control and for databases. Just a short overview of our agenda today. We're going to do an overview of the product, structural overview of how the product basically is all structured within the agent environment, or the control environment, a demo of the installation and configuration, and a review of the product features, then some tips and tricks, and then finally a QA session at the end. And just a little on the QA, as the session goes on, you can enter your questions via the QA chat window, and we'll get to those at the end and respond to those. To start off with, control for databases overview. Control for databases is a control module, just similar to other control modules such as SAP, or Informatica, AFT. This control module plugs into the agent. And I'll show you a little bit more about that here in a minute. We'll actually go through an installation process. Currently supports Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, Sybase, DB2, and Postgres. Supported versions for Control-M for databases. With Control-M, we currently support Control-M 6.4, 7.0, and 8.0. The latest release of Control-M for databases is 7.0, and the 7.0 version will install with 6.4 and the 8.0 versions. A single install can support multiple database types, so you don't have to have an install for each database type. One install can support any of the 5 supported database types. I want to spend a minute here just talking about a structural overview so you kind of understand where we're going today. The control-M, you can see here from my diagram, the control-M for databases is installed on the agent. What I'm showing here. It is integrated into the control-M server with the CTM get CM command. We'll talk briefly about that here in a second. I'll show you how to set that up. And then it integrates from there from the control-M server into the EM server via the configuration manager, the CCM, and then the job definition itself inside the job form. And I'll show you some examples of how that's set up in version 8. And then on the back end, it connects to each of the database types that we support. I've listed 3 of those here. And what I was wanting to show you is the fact that we use a JDBC connection to make that database connection. So the one Control-M for databases install uses JDBC to connect to each of the RDBMSs that you'll be connecting to. Why that's important is that you understand when we do the install, we don't require any outside software. We don't require an Oracle client or a Microsoft SQL Server client. We use our own JDBC connection method to make the connection to the database. So nothing's required outside of the product install itself. The controller for databases install. Today I'm going to show you 3 components. The agent install itself. I'll briefly go through that. Control-M server configuration, the CTM get CM command that registers the controller for databases with the Control-M server. And then finally, I'll go through the account configuration inside the configuration manager. With that, I'm going to switch over to my desktop so I can take you through some of the steps of the install. And just briefly about the environment I have here. I have Control-M 8.0 installed on this desktop, and that is connecting to an EM and Control-M server running on a Linux box that I'll switch over to in a little bit when I run the CTM get CM command. And then I have several agents installed in this environment. One of those agents is directly on this box, talking back to the Control-M server. And that's where I'm going to execute the install now, is on this box with the Control-M agent that's already installed, the version 7 agent. I've already downloaded the product from our EPD website. You can download it from our electronic distribution website. In order to execute the install, I take the DRMQL file, in this case for Windows, 64-bit, and simply run the setup. Kick off. Now, in this first screen here, it's asking me where I want to install the controller for databases. Since we allow multiple agents, I could install it. There's a second agent actually running on this box, but I'm just going to pick the default agent for this installation. Ask me to confirm that I'm installing it into the default agent. Now, one thing to note here, if I was setting up an automated install where I wanted to use a solid install process, I could generate that process file right here. But today I'm going to go ahead and execute the install live. and then it's completed. Earlier versions of the product in 7 and 6.4, there are some additional steps that need to be done in order to get the plugin to work. One of these is CTM get CM command, which I still need to do in version 8, but the registration within the desktop is already done for me. It's installed automatically with the 8 product, so I don't need to do that. But if you're using version 7 or 6.4, you'd want to follow these additional steps. We now have the product in place. Now what I'm going to do is register the CM for databases with my Control M server. To do that, I'm going to switch over to command prompt on my Control M server. Again, this is running on a Linux box. I'm going to run the CTM get CM command. You have to do this with any CM that we install, basically registering the CM within the Control M server. Run this command. It's going to ask me the host. In this case, I'm running a CTM Q prod -win. That's the name of the agent, the box that has the agent installed that I just put the controller for databases on. That's the application type. You can leave this at asterisk. It will pull all the CMs from that agent. And in this case, I don't want to view what's already there. I actually want to get the CMs. Let's type get. And here you can see we actually have controller for databases 7.0. So it found the CM and it's registered that now in the Control M server. Now if I go to my configuration manager, you can see here I already have the agent installed, CTM win prod agent. If I refresh the screen, and there it is. It takes a minute sometimes for it to register with the Control M processes. So now we've installed the agent, we've registered with the Control M server, and now I'm going to go through configuring an account so that we can actually submit jobs via this agent. I'm going to go into the configuration profile management utility. In this case, I'm going to add an Oracle job. First thing it asks me is the profile name. This is a logical name. It doesn't have any significance related specifically to the database. It's the logical name that I'm going to use to reference the account within the job. And I'll show you that here in a minute. First thing I'm going to do is call this Aura Prod 1. We'll call this Aura Prod 1. Now you can see here my drop-down, I've got all 5 of my RDBMSs that I could pick. In case I'm going to leave it at Oracle. And then I'm going to pick the 11G as my database type. Hit Next. Before I fill out my specific connection information. In this case, I have the ability to pick a service name, a SID, or connection string. I'm going to leave this at service name. In this particular case, my service name is Aura 11.2DB. And then the host name of that box. In this case, it's Control M 711G. My port, this would be my Oracle listener port, it's 1521, the default. And then I'm going to set a username for the login. So in this case, I'm going to use my EM user. Give it my password. Now this EM user account is a schema owner inside the database. It's not the one that I use to log into the EM GUI with. So this is actually a database account that I've built, have the product installed with. I could pick any schema account within that database. Next, it comes to the configuration, advanced configuration parameters. Just to briefly go over these, the max and concurrent connections. Is this the max and concurrent connections within the database for this connection? Number of connection retries. This is the number of connection retries before it fails the connection. And this is the connection retry timeout. In other words, it's 5 seconds. It'll keep trying that before it fails that connection. So in this case, it would try for 5 seconds, fail once, fail again, fail third, fourth, and fifth time. That's why I have 5 as set as my max retries. And then the connection idle time. I can disconnect the connection if it sits for idle more than 300 seconds by default, or I can have it disconnect immediately if there are no pending requests. So if I submit a job and the requests are finished, there's nothing else on that channel, then it will close that channel out with the database. Now that I've got my connection defined, just simply review screen. I'll test it. We can test it successfully, so it means we've connected, we've validated the account with the database. We can go ahead and finish that out. So it's been successfully added to our CCM, and now you can see the account here. Now we can begin to use to submit jobs to that account. Switching back over to our presentation, just to recap, we installed the agent, register it with Control-M Server again with CTM Get CM, and then do the account configuration within the Configuration Manager. Moving on to our next part, I'd like to show you a brief demo of some of the features within the job form and how to submit the job. I'm going to go briefly talk a little bit about the account management as it relates to this specific job. The job types, we'll go through each one of these, and then some of the output management for the result sets that comes back from my job. I'm going to switch back to my desktop. So now I'm in my EM GUI. I won't bore you with the login. I've already set it up within my workspace, my Control-M Workload Automation workspace. And I'm going to go ahead and start by building a job. So I've already got a folder open here and a workspace. And I'm just going to simply go up and into my workspace job selection. I'm going to pick database. I'm going to drag and drop that down into my folder. It's going to give me a job. I'm going to double click on this. I could have edited it over to the right, but I'm going to do it here in the middle of the screen. And the first thing I'm going to do is pick my host and host group. Now, this is where we relate back to the account management. You can see here I've got 3 agents defined that I could submit to. In this particular case, I'm going to go with the CTM prod. I have an Oracle account set up there as well. Now, when I select this CTM prod, what I want you to notice is when I select the details, you'll see there's an account button here and it's a load button or accounts form and a load button here. When I hit that load, you notice it pulls up 2 accounts, MSQL account and an Aura prod account. These are different than the ones I built before because we're going to a different agent now. I've already had this one set up. In this particular case, I'm going to pick the Oracle prod. And the first example I'm going to show you is just a simple SQL open query. I'm going to do a select asterisk from $3 version. This will pull back the version of the Oracle instance that I'm running against. One of the things I wanted to point out here, we have a query designer built into the tool, and I can also insert from a file if I wanted to bring SQL directly into this environment. Those are 2 nice features. The system sysout handling, this one is important. I wanted to point this out. In order to see the result sets attached to my job output, my sysout, I need to actually tell the job to do that. If I run this without doing that, you won't see any output. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and say append output to sysout. I've got several selections here on the output format, text, XML, CSV, and HTML. I'm going to leave this at text for today, just to keep things simple. I'm going to say OK here. Now that I've got my job built, got a point where I want it to go, I'm going to say save it, OK. I'm going to go ahead and order it out. Order immediately. It's going to validate. Done with my validation. Now let's switch over to my monitor, and there's my job. It's actually already finished. We're going to take a look at the output. This is my sysout. I'm going to scroll down, and sure enough, here is my select asterisk from $V version. We can see my Oracle database type. I'm going to move back up to planning, recheck out my workspace. I'm going to create another job. I'm going to rearrange this, keep it clean. Again, double-clicking on the job. Again, I'm going to go and pick my host. And that's important because that establishes where the accounts that I have already defined in Configuration Manager are pulled from. Switch to my details for specific database information. Again, the load. This time I'm going to run a store procedure. So I'm not going to change the drop-down. I've got a schema package, and name available to from the stored procedure. In the case of the schema, I can hit the ellipse button, and it will pull all the schemas available within that database. I'm going to go ahead and select my EM user schema. Then my next selection is package. Now I'm not going to change the package. And one clarification on package, it's not just store procedures within a package, it's any store procedure within that schema. This is a little bit of a misnomer. Some people believe that this means I can only get store procedures within a package, but that's not the case. It's any store procedure, package in a package or otherwise. And you'll see that here in a second. When I hit the ellipse next to this, by leaving that asterisk, I get a list of all the store procedures within that schema. I've already built one here called Show Objects. I'm going to select that one. Now, if I wanted to, at this point, I could pass parameters in. If I had in parameters, I could also use those. I could also select auto edits to go into that store procedure. Again, I'm going to change my sysout handling and change this to, I went a little fast on that, select output format to text so that I can see my results set. Now that I've got it set up to run my store procedure, I'm going to save it again. I'm going to change anything else here. I'm going to say OK. This is job 13. I'm going to order it. And the validation is complete. We'll switch over to monitoring. Open up the job. Oops, I'm sorry. Open up the output for the job. Take a look at our result set. And sure enough, there's our information. Basically, I ran a store procedures, does a select on the tables from the EM user schema. And this is what's inside that schema. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go again back over to my planning section, check out my workspace, build one more job using Oracle. Open this job up. And I'm going to pick my account, host is CTM prod, go to my details, and this time I want to show you, after I load my account, a script job, an SQL script job. Now, an SQL script will pull it directly from the file system. One thing that I want to note here that's important is when I go to pull from the file system, I'm actually pulling from the agent's file system, not the file system of the Oracle server or the control room server, but wherever the agent's installed. In this case, I'm going to go up a little bit. And I've got a directory I built out here called SQL test scripts. I've already built a little script out here that basically does a select on all underscore tables. You'll see that here in a second. So now I've got my script implemented. Again, if I want to see the output, I got to change my sysout handling. I want to save that. Job is ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and order it. Validation is complete. Again, we'll run over to our monitoring section, and it just finished. So let's take a look at the sys or the output. And if we scroll down, we can see, sure enough, it ran my select table name from all underscore tables, and this is the output. So everything is appended there. All right, so for the last job type that I want to show you, switch back over to my planning section here, check out my workspace again. I'd like to go over another job, one that we get a lot of questions on, which is an SSIS job within SQL Server. Open this job up. Now this time I'm going to switch which agent or host I'm running this on. I do have a SQL Server account on this particular definition, but I'm going to switch over to this WAK64 Martin. And the reason I'm doing that, and this is important to understand about SSIS packages, in order for us to work correctly, we have to have the integration service for Microsoft SQL Server installed on the agent. If that is not present, we can't run the SSIS package. The way the product works is when you install the agent and you install it with the integration service from Microsoft SQL Server, we use the API within that environment to submit our jobs. Without the integration service, we don't have that API available to us, so we can't submit SSIS package jobs. So the integration service has to be installed. Now, that does not mean the SQL Server itself has to be installed, just the integration service. So you don't have to have SQL Server installed on the agent system. You just need the integration service. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Now, you'll notice this time, since I picked an account, that SQL Server, SSIS packages, actually I didn't pick it, I apologize. Let me do that real quick. There was only one account available, so it made the assumption that I was using a SQL Server account, but I now have my SQL Server account picked. I'll hit my drop-down. You'll see now that there's an SSIS package available that wasn't available on Oracle. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and pick my source. Now, there's three sources available to me: the SQL Server, the file system, and SSIS package store. Again, the file system is on the agent. So if you're pulling the SSIS packages, it's the file system on the agent. The SSIS package store is wherever you define it. I'm going to leave this at SQL Server. I'm going to go ahead and hit my little ellipse over here, and this will pull up my respective SSIS packages that are available to me. I have one defined that's just a basic maintenance plan. It's going to do a backup of this EM database. I'm going to go ahead and select that. A couple things to note here. If I had a configuration file for the SSIS package that I wanted to feed in, I could do that here, define that. I could also define a property and a value to go into the SSIS package, and you are allowed to use auto-edit variables within this environment as well. So that's a nice feature. Again, my sysout handling, I want to make sure that I pin the results so you can see them. Say OK here. I'm going to save this. Say OK. I'm going to go ahead and order this job. Validation is complete. We'll switch over to our monitoring environment. Click on the button there, and it's just finished. Go ahead and take a look at our output. And sure enough, you can see here it ran a backup, validated the database, and then went ahead and ran a backup via that SSIS package. Okay, let's switch back over to our presentation. Just to recap, again, we went over the account management, how it relates to the specific job forms, the job types, the four that we went over. I think I demoed all of these, and then talked a little bit about the output management and how to get the results set back to your job or to your output. Next, I just want to kind of do a recap of the product features. I've got 4 outlying features and then a centralized feature. Well, I'll just go through each one of these. Multiple database support, we talked about that. The 5 RDBMSs that we support. The nice thing about that is there's only one integration point into the product for all those 5 databases. Seamless job integration, so the ability to handle things like auto-edit variables within your scripts and to pass those directly in from other jobs. And of course, all the other added benefits of running it within control environment. The ability to run SSIS, store procedures, scripts, and open SQL support. And then the sysout handling, the ability to append the result set to your sysout. That's a nice feature. And then, of course, the final one is the centralized account management. I think this is the most important one because this really gets you away from having to manage scripts individually. One of the biggest pains that we hear is that people have to deal with scripts and the logins and security around those logins within the individual scripts. With centralized account management, all that's handled through the agent and through the product, so you don't have to do that. You can do everything through the configuration manager. Okay, to talk a little bit about some of the tips and tricks. Just some stuff that I wanted to point out to you. first off, starting off with SSIS configuration, we get a lot of questions around this. One of the recommendations I have for you is to make sure that you're using the latest SSIS integration service with your agent. In other words, if you're trying to run an MS-SQL 2008 job or SSIS package through a 2005 integration service, you're going to run into errors and you're going to have problems. So make sure that you're using the latest. The 2008 can run a 2005, but a 2005 can't run a 2008. Verify your permissions in an SSIS package, realizing that not only are you dealing with permissions depending at the agent level and at the file level if you're pulling your SSIS package from the file system, but you're also dealing with database permissions. So making sure all those permissions are lined up is important to make sure the job runs successfully for you. Next is test outside the product using dtexec. If you can get this to run out, your SSIS to run from the command line using dtexec from the agent as the ID that you're submitting it under, then it's more than likely going to work through our product. It's very rare that it doesn't if it runs through dtexec as well. This is a good way to verify your variables too if you're passing in variables to make sure the formats are correct. I've included a little link here that will take you to a knowledge article at Microsoft that has really good detail on how to run dtexec and how to run it from the command line. And then lastly, just one note about user-defined variables. We only support user-defined variables currently as pass-in variables. We don't support system variables. They're looking at adding that in version 8, but currently it's just user-defined variables. Some tips for Oracle. Oracle products only support ANSI SQL and OpenQuery. We do not support PLSQL higher order functions within the OpenQuery. OpenQuery is good for any ANSI SQL, but anything that requires a higher order, and this is true with any of the RDBMSs, whether it's T-SQL or PLSQL or any of the higher orders in Postgres or DB2. You'll want to use instead, like I've noted down here, a store procedure or a script. We do support all of those functions within the store procedure, obviously because that's running within the database space, or as a script as we pass it in through the database. MS-SQL and Sybase, a couple of notes here, things that might trip you up. The go command seems simple enough, but make sure that it is case sensitive. You want to make sure you're using uppercase. That's the default for the product. We have a knowledge article that explains more detail about that. If you feel that you want to use lowercase, there's some information about how to change that behavior. And then the use database command. I get people that ask me, how do I switch? I've got my account set for a particular database. How do I use another database? It's pretty simple. You just use the use database or use command within the environment to switch into the other database. You don't have to build a separate connection. One thing I want to mention about the product is it does use connection pooling. There's one connection for each defined account always open. So what that means is we open one account to the database when you initially connect to the database. If you submit 5 more jobs, it will open an account for each one of those jobs. But when it's finished, it will roll back 4 of those and keep one of them open. So there's always one available to the database, and that tends to confuse people because they go out and look and they say, well, I don't have any running jobs, but I still have an open account. That has to do with the connection pooling within a JDBC driver and allows for less overhead in establishing those connections. If you don't want that behavior, there's a knowledge article about specifics around that. Also, we have information about how to change that behavior so that no accounts are left open. Something else to remember inside this environment, since we are using a JVM, Java Virtual Machine, there are limitations to the amount of memory. If you're running large data sets, in other words, you've got store procedures, something that are pulling or doing a lot of processing sorts within memory, or pulling back large data sets, then you may run into memory issues. We're at 512 megs out of the gate. You may need to bump that. The behavior you'll notice is that the job will seem to slow down or will stay in an execute state for a long time, or may not finish at all, it may just get stuck if you're really processing a lot of data. We do have ways to bump that memory up, and this knowledge article here will tell you how to do that. We do have a fix pack coming out that I wanted to mention as well with some specific RDBMS fixes. That fix pack will be out, is tentatively scheduled for July of this year. So just make sure you're signed up for proactive notification for the product so that you know when that's shipped. And that concludes the demonstration and the product overview. A couple things I did want to notice on the final slide here. Some resources. I've included a link over to the Controller for Databases support website. This is where you'll find all the documentation on the product. You can go directly there using this link. Our next Connect with Control-M webinar will be April 13th, and that will be Control-M for SAP with Eric and Javier. They'll be doing a broad overview of the Control-M for SAP, and that will be very good information. You'll definitely want to attend that if you're interested at all in SAP. Survey and future topics. At the end of this, you'll get a survey. Please be sure to fill that out. If you have specific topics you want to see, this is how we determine what we're going to do next. And your feedback is always important to us, and that will definitely help us determine what we need to do and what you're interested in. Follow Control-M on Twitter, Facebook, and BMC communities. We've included our BMC community links. Always good information out there, not just from us, but from our customers and colleagues, so you definitely want to make sure you're signed up for those. And then as an example, we have a Control-M self-service real-world implementation story that a customer is doing on March 20th that this link will get you signed up for. If you're interested at all in Control-M self-service, or if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend that you attend that webinar and check that out because it's really going to be good. There's a lot of good information coming out of that. And with that, I will thank you for attending. And if you, like always, have any questions, you can contact us support. Look forward to working with you with Control-M for Databases. Have a great day.
Again, that concludes today's conference. Thank you all for joining us.